Fanzone, united by the game, powered by MWOS World of Sport.
Welcome to Fanzone, your latest destination for everything PSL related. We're bringing you in-depth analysis, unmatched coverage, and a fan-fueled passion for the Premier Soccer League, as well as a couple of highlights from other Zimbabwean sports. But here in the studio, we're all united by the game. My name is Sips, and with me in the Fanzone studio is the co-presenter, Steve. How are you doing today?
Hey Sips, I'm recovering from the weekend. It was just an amazing PSL weekend in Norton on Saturday. What a game. We had Dynamos, Highlanders, couldn't live up to that on Sunday, but I got selfies there with Marvelous Nakamba, with Marshall Munetsi. That was fantastic. CAF Champions League final, UEFA Champions League final. Whoa, what a sporting weekend it was.
Yeah, definitely the atmosphere at MWOS seemed to be buzzing, but also at Rufaro Stadium. But, without any further ado, you might recognize a couple of faces here in the guest panel. Looking first at you, Simba. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Sips. How are you?
I'm great.
I had a fantastic weekend. Looking forward to the show.
Yeah, it's great to hear. So Simba is a Star FM sports broadcaster, and he's going to be bringing us all the insights and knowledge about what is happening in the PSL and Division 1. Then looking to his left is Shaun De Souza. Shaun, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks, Sibs.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you here in the studio. Shaun is the Under-20 Junior Sables head coach and also the two-time Africa Barthes Trophy winner. But with all of the introductions being done, let us now dig into and discuss the Matchday 14 Roundup. All right, Matchday 14. It was a busy weekend of football to be played. The biggest rivalry being Dynamos and Highlanders going toe-to-toe. There was more Scotland. There was so many games happening here. Simba versus Ngezi. But before I get too carried away, the first game you want to look at is probably the biggest match of Zimbabwean football history, Dynamos and Highlanders. Steve, what a game that was. It ended in a 0-0 draw. But what did you think of the game and the results?
Yeah, it just shows things are shifting really in Zimbabwean football because the more Scotland, more passion, more entertainment. People came in just before kick-off at Rufaro Stadium on Sunday. It was a good crowd in the end, but the game really needed a goal. So just felt a bit flat compared to the excitement of Saturday's game at Ngoni Stadium. Dynamos need a striker, but talking to fans after the game, Dynamos fans are just resigned to this is how it is. They need a attacking midfielder, they need a striker, but they just seem to be getting used to this where they're struggling to score. Highlanders fans weren't much more optimistic either. Things are shifting. Two of the giants, well, you can add in Caps United, they're just all struggling.
Yeah, and I know, Simba, you always have an opinion in your 50 cents. What do you think about that game on Sunday?
I think we saw a shift of the things in terms of our football because this is the biggest match on the local calendar. But look at the numbers, the build-up, everything. I was laughing with the police officers who were there saying that this is the easiest assignment that you've ever had. When you're assigned to this big battle, but there are no skirmishes. And there were no moments that we were off our seats or even the fans off their seats, in terms of the goal-scoring opportunities, everything. And even when there was an offside call and Highlanders striker, midfielder Prince Dube had the ball behind the nets, and even the Highlanders fans didn't even, a quarrel or, everything that was there wasn't like we are witnessing the biggest match in the country. It's like people were having a hangover of what had happened on Saturday between MWOS and Scotland. But on the field of play, I liked Matthews Chiweta from Highlanders. He announced himself on the big stage. He was the man to talk about. And for Dynamos, like Steve said, I think they need a striker. They need somebody who can work and partner Frank Ajiman up front because for Highlanders, they're two strikers. Breton Ngube and Rizen Sibanda, you could see that they had good shape. They had people who really wanted to get the goal. And also, Messin Mshore showed us the reason why he has been called to the national team. Of course, there's a late replacement, but he could play the ball and yet 2 chances that he could shoot from range. But overall, it shows us that things are shifting in terms of how people, are attending our matches or what is happening on the field of play, because the numbers don't lie.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an awkward conversation to have because it is the biggest rivalry in Zimbabwean football. However, Dynamo is sitting in 16th, the relegation zone, Highlanders in 10th. So you look at the statistics and the log table, and it says quite the opposite of the biggest derby in Zim. But, coming into this match, I was really hoping that the Glamour boys would be able to pull off a victory, under Saul. Highlanders have struggled, in the past recent form. Up until about Matchday 9, they were 4th. Now they've dropped all the way down to 10th, and there's a reason for that. The most recent loss against Herentals, 1-0 at home. That shouldn't really be a result we're expecting, Steve.
Yeah, that was costly for them. I think Dynamos were happy to get a draw in the end, although in 3 games, no win for Saul Chamanuka. That's not a good return early on with his assignment as Dynamo's coach, but you could tell he was happy to settle for a point there. Highlanders more ambitious under Kelvin Kayendu. They were playing the better football. They had more chances by far. Yeah, but neither team really impressed.
So, yeah, that match ended in a bit of a lackluster and underwhelming result, a 0-0 draw. But the headlining match of the weekend, MWOS FC versus Scotland, a rivalry which has blossomed into, one could argue, maybe looking from a fan's perspective, the biggest game of the season thus far. Steve, you were in Norton. Tell us about that game.
Yeah, it was just memorable. One of the most exciting days out that I've had in many, many years of covering Zimbabwean football. The passion, that's what it was about. The Norton community, so proud of their team, and there was such a lot at stake here. So we got there about 1 o'clock. The stand was 2/3 full at least. The brass band never stopped until after 5. The celebrations went on long after that. But people are proud of that team, and rightly so, because without any major signings, they still managed to see off Scotland. I'm so happy that the game was played in Norton rather than at Rufaro Stadium, because this was one for the Norton community to enjoy. And Billy Veremu with that goal early on in the second half. For Scotland, they just didn't live up to the billing in terms of the players that they've got. They were flat, really. Taimo Machope was not in the squad. Their main striker, Linoth Chikua, was kept on the bench. He didn't play at all there. And you could just tell that to MWOS, the way they're playing as a unit, that they were going to hang on, and they really deserved the 3 points there. It was a great occasion, wonderful, wonderful atmosphere. There could have been many more fans if the stadium could have accommodated it. It's a good facility. It's going to get better. And one thing that I was impressed with, 30 years I've been covering Zimbabwean football, the bathrooms have got toilet tissue in them. And I've never seen that before anywhere I've gone in Zimbabwean football. National Sports Stadium, no. At the AFCON, yes. At the World Cup, yes. But here, there's a first.
Well, it was a MWOS win, 1-0. But Simba, the past couple of match days, we've struggled to see Scotland put the ball into the back net. The match that was abandoned, 0-0 between Scotland and Chickenin, and now against MWOS. And you could tell the players are a little bit deflated, especially in those last 10 minutes of that extra time. Why do you think this is happening to Scotland right now?
I don't really think it's about them, but it's about the opponent that they're facing. Because when I look at that game, the way that MWOS structured their play and the way that they played, they've got youngsters that, wants to make a name for themselves. And you look at the MWOS captain, Tafazo Nyabunze, the way that he marshaled the defense, the way that he commanded the team, I don't think that there is more that Scotland could have done, because you look at even the build-ups from the back, the way that they were so much confident on the ball. There was a moment even when he had the ball and he had to dribble past Kama Billiard, having the guts to dribble past Kama Billiard, and then there was also Mtokozi Zimsebe. And then you have those players that are also in the national team, and then you say, I can stand tall against them. And you look at Matthew Murambiwa also, the way that he played, he never gave respect to the Scotland players, to the names that are in there. And then Dizzy, Tinotenda Mchikambizi, the way that he marshaled the midfield and going into those tackles. And on 2 occasions, he had one ball that hit the crossbar and another one that forced a save from Nelson Chajga. So you could tell that MWOS were really organized from the start. And for Scotland, what I think probably went wrong maybe was the formation, trying to play with a false number 9. And it didn't really help matters for them because MWOS had a plan for them. Even when they made those changes in the second half, bring in real number 9, Sadni Uriko, bring in a speed winger, Michael Tapera. But look at how the defense and the midfield were organized from the MWOS side. They never gave them space. They never gave them room to spray the balls to the wings. So they suffocated the wings, and everything was polished. I think it was a game that MWOS coach did his homework more than the Scotland coach, and everything just went in their favor. And you have got young players who wants to be remembered in this game. Look at the people that were watching this game, all the tension and everything that was there. And we are not talking about these youngsters because they waited for this day and everything went the way that they planned for it.
Well, this derby certainly and rivalry certainly lived up to its hype. We know that there were a couple of scores to settle. From the MWOS side, it was actually Scotland who beat MWOS to advance and to be promoted to the PSL. But talking about Division 1, Simba, have you got a bit of a summary and roundup for us as to what has been happening in Division 1?
Yes, indeed, and things are actually also hotting up the same way that we are also witnessing in the Premier League, because the ticket to the Premier League for the 4 regions, and in the northern region we have Agama on top, and they are on 22 points, a point ahead of Ngombe Yaora, who are on second position. And the teams that are in the northern region, it's really tougher because it seems like every week you are changing the team that is at the top. And we are also going to have some midweek fixtures. And the game that we are going to really look forward to is having third placed Chinoi Rangers also playing against Harare City, and you also have Ngombe Yaora playing against Trojan Stars, who also won during the course of the weekend. And competition again in the southern region, there are 2 teams that are really standing out above the others. You have Bulawayo City and Wange tied on 19 points each, and the team that is on third position, Bulawayo City, is on 15 points. So I think there in the southern region, it looks like it's going to be a 2-horse race between Wanke and Bulawayo Chiefs. And you come to the Central Region Soccer League, again, there's so much competition there, and it also looks again it's going to be a 2-horse race between Sheshamua on top, and they are on 26 points, and they drew in a derby against Chapungu at the weekend, 1-0 draw. And then you have Hard Rock, who are in second position from Kwekwe. They are the manbags of the region with top players, and they managed to win against Gokwe North 1-0, and they're just a point behind Shesham. So it's going to be a 2-horse race there. And in the eastern region, we have FC Hunters. They managed to open a 3-point lead at the top because they managed to win their game against Mtare City 2-1. And the team that is on second position, Tenex, were held to a goalless draw by Buffaloes. It was a tough match. So you have Hunters opening a 3-point lead at the top. I think that's the region where you've got a team having more points, having breathing space than the team on the second position.
Well, as always, there's definitely lots going on in Division 1. But now, with the roundup coming to a close, let us look at that MWOS PSL Predictor leaderboard. Alright, so the MWOS PSL Predictor, it is definitely looking a bit different after Matchday 14. Congratulations to Icon, who is still at the top, but there's a big but in there. He is joined by Simba, who are also tied on 340 points. Unfortunately, there's only one Suzuki Espresso, but there's still lots of predictions to be made. But Steve, what a mixed bag of results this weekend was. It was an absolute doozy. You know, you had FC Platinum beating Tal1. FC was the away team. You had Kwekwe and Greenfield drawing. Like, teams didn't want to play to my predictions, and I'm actually upset about it. It was a really poor round of predictions from my end.
I'd said stay with Herentals as the form team. They lost to Bakita Minerals. What a shocker that was. I thought there'd be at least a scoring draw in the Dynamos Highlanders, that there were no goals. Caps, I wonder who predicted that, a 1-0 win there away to Manica Diamonds. I heard from one of the Caps players that the pitch was bumpy and difficult to play on, but some would have been bold enough to have predicted a Caps away win. But yeah, that was a difficult week.
Yeah, it really was, and you can see from the top 10 leaderboard here, lots of things have happened. You know, our biggest fall in the top 10 is a Kuda. That person has dropped down 6 places. But with one person's bad weekend, other people had a great weekend. I mean, if you take a look at Boss Kunze, who finds himself in 7th after jumping up 23 places. So well done to Boss Kunze, first time round in the top 10. And as for another person, Tinashe 1, who's come up 16 places. So there's always stuff happening on the leaderboard. Icon finally has a rival, which is Simba. But guys, go on over to fanzone.co.zw, sign yourself up. It's a lot of fun. And if you don't get to the top, there are sweepstake prizes which can be won. The Suzuki the Eco is still out there, still up for grabs. So make sure you complete your predictions. There is no PSL this weekend, so you can't predict them quite yet, but we'll leave you on that cliffhanger between Icon and Simba. So let us now looking ahead.
So that was the Predictor. It's Fan Zone, where we talk all things local sport, and time for looking ahead.
So the COSAFA Cup is around the corner, the first match on Wednesday, and Michael Nees, the head coach of the Warriors, has named his squad. A couple of unpleased people, but I'm sure as a coach, you're always going to get that. But Simba, what are your thoughts about what's going to happen in this COSAFA Cup for the Warriors?
I think for me, I for one was saying that for this tournament, it depends with the mandate that the coach is given by the National Association. Because look, in the past, we would say that we want this tournament to use it to fine-tune the team when you're going for a tournament. But we have already qualified for the AFCON in December. So the coach had the liberty to try other things like having development of players so that we prepare for the Olympic Games and the qualifiers starting next year. So he had to take a big chunk of the players under the age of 20. Yeah, of course, people always have reservations about the selection to say we thought maybe we're going to have 1 or 2 players that are doing well on the calendar above the age that the coach wants. But I agree, just having the players that are there in the developmental side. And when you're taking players, the developmental players, the expectations should be lower, because what you want is to see how those players are going to perform under pressure and how they're going to develop, So for me, I don't have much, reservations about the squad that was selected, only to say that probably would have wanted to see the top goal scorers in there, Washington, Navaya, and Billy Veremu. Because, be it a tournament that also is kind of a preserve for the locally based players. There's no another chance that they would get to play in the national team because the senior team, the A side, is mainly composed of the foreign-based players. But again, we just support the coach in terms of his thinking of what he wants from the players that he selected.
And the Warriors, they've got 3 upcoming matches being Mauritius, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Steve, yes, it is a sort of developmental tournament, but in terms of competition, do you think that these 3 sides will be able to benefit and compete with the Warriors squad?
Yeah, COSAFA Cup, so the coach, he's said what he wants us to do from it. I would have put some more senior players in there, especially our top locals, because they deserved a chance to travel there. Mauritius should be pretty straightforward for us. Then for Burkina Faso and Niger, this is for the Warriors main team playing those games in Morocco. Interesting, because in our AFCON group we don't have West African teams there. We've got Angola and South Africa, who we know already. Egypt might have said better for us to play North African opposition, as we're going to face Egypt at the AFCON finals. But it's really good. We've been crying out for friendlies for the Warriors in preparation for AFCON and World Cup qualifiers. We play in September in World Cup qualifiers too. So this is really good. Got to say well done to Magwizi's Zifa for organising this. So likes of Jordan Zemura, Marvelous Nakamba, Marshall Munetsi, they're taking a well-deserved rest after finishing the European season. But it's great that they got a chance, especially to go to Morocco. Conditions will be different because it's summer there now. It'll be winter when the AFCON is on in December. Not going to be playing at the same match venues because those are still under renovation for the AFCON. Burkina Faso is just such a good example of what an organised team can do. Their regulars at the AFCON, regulars from the quarterfinals onwards, they perform so well. I think we'll learn a lot from them. Niger, no big names in their team, but they've done pretty well too. A couple of Chan qualifications. Very physical team for us to come up against there. So yeah, it's going to be great that we got these 2 assignments at the same time, COSAFA Cup and the friendlies in Morocco.
But Simba, I want to ask you, after what was a slightly disappointing result for the Warriors earlier this year in March in the 2026 World Cup qualifiers, we struggled to find a bit of form. 2 draws. I think one was to Benin, the other to Nigeria. Why? Surely we should be playing our strongest side just to really amp up our team and get the morale, get the momentum going coming into this COSAFA Cup.
Yeah, but I think we should also be at this moment also casting our net wider so that we look at the players. Yeah, of course, we'll be going in December and then you count the months that we are left with. But the more we try to rely on the players that have been doing good for us, it will also be dangerous for us because you know what happens just before a tournament. You might have players getting injured. And should we have 2-3 players getting injured, what is our fallback plan? So I think for the coach to try new players coming in there would also help us. And also resting these players would also make other players that have been on the fringes to also take the baton to say, I'm the one who is going to take the responsibility and be counted upon. And if we can have such, by the time we get to play the World Cup qualifiers in September and then going into December, there will be real competition for places within the team. These players that have been left out to rest, they'll be also watching. So when they watch and see the other players really competing, we know that we'll be having a serious competition for places going into Morocco in December.
Yeah, well, the Warriors will have their first fixture on Wednesday against Mauritius, starting off their COSAFA Cup tournament. But now, let us look to beyond the pitch, where we take a break from football and the PSL. So looking beyond the pitch, our Sables travelled to Lusaka to play Zambia in the second leg of the Zambezi Challenger. This time round, we saw an unexpected result. Yes, the Sables did win, but the scoreline a lot closer than what we anticipated, it being 19-25 in favour of the Sables, as compared to Harare at Harare Sports Club a couple of weeks ago, where it was 70 points to 15. Sean, why do you think there's been such a drastic change in this scoreline?
Sips, I think it was an interesting thought process by the union to continue the cycle of having a back-to-back and back in the decision to travel to Zambia after the first round of games. And credit to Zambia, who went back to the drawing board and did a bit of homework on the game that they played with us in Harare and recruited more players, did a bit of a shuffle in their technical team, got in some new blood to come and help and advise them. And obviously the result shows what they did and the work that they put in the few weeks that they had. Not saying that the Sables have took the foot off the pedal. The Sables have done some work. A lot of the foreign-based players have started to arrive and have been given the opportunity to gel with the local players. I think Coach Peach is obviously trying to just look at different combinations. Not to say that he wasn't going to give it his all, but the team performed. And just credit to Zambia for stepping up.
Yeah, it's a good result for Zambia, especially after that first test. And it's always good to have competition between neighbouring countries. But no, with this result at the second leg, and Zimbabwe and the Sables' hopes to not just get to the Africa Cup but win it, how does this result affect, maybe the momentum or maybe the players and what is to come in the latter stages of June and July?
I don't think the result will affect the momentum. It's a W. The winning streak continues, and I think for the Sables camp, the excitement will still live on. The reality is the African teams are all trying to step up, and they're trying to showcase what they can do. It's a big title for grabs and opportunity for World Cup qualifiers. So everyone is actually putting their best foot forward. Just looking back to last year's Zambezi series, the Zambia fixture was tough. It was also a nail-biter last-minute try. So obviously that just tells you that Zambia playing in their background is a team to reckon with. So yeah, those are things to look forward to going into next year's series, knowing that that's going to be a tough encounter. But going to the Sables setup, I know there's a lot of players that are coming from the foreign-based players coming in. Into the setup who are already committed to the cause and looking forward to the July Africa Cup qualifiers.
And looking at that squad that you've mentioned, some have come back, some are foreign players, some are local. You've actually coached a couple of those players, some of them being Brian Chang, Dion Kumalo, Edu Sigauke, a couple others who are in the training squad, Wayne Kunaka, Benoni Nakaro. If I have forgotten your name, it's not on purpose. But as the Junior Sables under-20 coach, it's definitely the next step after under-20s. Definitely the next step is to get to the Sables. Is one of your objectives as the coach to be the biggest feeder into the Sables program?
Definitely. That goes without saying. Our job is to develop the athletes coming out of the school system, creating opportunities for university, for clubs, opening doors for these kids for scholarships. And our biggest focus is to feed the Sables and the Cheetahs, which in the last 2 years, we've done very well and would love to maintain that trajectory.
And with the players that I mentioned, Brian, Dion, Edward, they were part of your under-20 Junior Sables side, which have won the Barthes Trophy in 2023 and some of them also in 2022. However, in the past 2 years since we've hosted the Barthes Trophy, things haven't really gone the way you had planned and would have liked. And as people who watch the sports and have played, it's so easy in the background to say, Sean's doing this and this wrong, and this is what's wrong with the Sables. Give us your perspective as to maybe why things haven't gone wrong. Is it a management situation, or is it just a case of other teams are now also pouring resources and getting better as time goes along?
So maybe playing at home is not good for us. 2 tournaments we've hosted last year and this year. We haven't done well at home. The pressures of playing at home obviously played a role. But it's something that we need to learn. We're fortunate that we have the opportunity to host it again next year. This year we were given the first right of refusal for next year's rights. We had put in a plan in place. It's just unfortunate when you're at the top, you've won back-to-back titles, you are now a champion, and everyone is aiming for that title. You think you've put in enough work, but you don't realize that everyone else is going the extra mile. Obviously, then it gives us room to reflect. Maybe we need to restructure the way our league dates are set out, to give us more time with the national squad or the players that are selected for high performance, to get us ready for these internationals. I think it's something we need to just go back to the drawing board and look at going forward, knowing that we are hosting next year. We sort of have an idea of which window the tournament will be held.
And so, as you said, there's always things to work on. And from what I had noticed from speaking to other players, but also just what you do every year, there was a really big emphasis on preparation. From the training, the under-20 league, the Nedbank Challenge Cup is always a good fixture. But there was also the Outback Barbarians, the Sharks under-20 fixture, which happened after Barthes. What will next year's big thing to improve on for the Junior Sables and your plan for it?
I think when we're looking at the calendar that we set out for this year, it was a huge calendar. It's one for the history books. We haven't had so many fixtures for an under-20 age group in my tenure. I think even in history, Zimbabwe rugby history, having an Australia team come all the way to play the under-20 team was huge for the franchise and for Zimbabwe rugby. Having the Sharks come in to play us is also another good token to take away. We hoped when we engaged the Sharks, we had hoped that they would come before the Barthes tournament, but because of the Sharks Academy calendar, we only could play after the tournament. But for us, it was about the tourism, the local tourism, having these international teams coming out. The Junior Sables actually going to play the game in Australia. The Australia fixture in Bulawayo was also one of our platforms to try and just encourage people on the tourism side of things.
And Shaun, not to make this conversation all dull and gloom, there's a new project that you have started up when it comes to Zimbabwean rugby, getting more teams involved, and it's the grassroots to greatness. Can you shed a bit more light and tell us more about what that is?
I think, the successes we've had winning the back-to-back 2 years ago has given us this need to look, to dig deeper and search for talent out there. We have a huge pool of talented players that are out in the country, but we don't have the platforms to watch them play, to get selectors out there to go see what's out there. So fortunately for us, Nedbank came on and granted us the opportunity to have this Grassroots to Greatness program, where we go to all the provinces and have open trials. Anyone that's keen to want to get involved with the game of rugby, to want to put their hands up for national selection and be a junior Sable, we've opened that door and we've identified good talent coming up. And I think the positive side of this season was the depth that we've created with the youngsters that are coming up that will make next year's selection tough and give us that we get back to the competitive era of guys really trying to fight to get into the team, and not just because you played in a certain school and you played first team and you made Craven Week, Academy Week under 18, that you're going to naturally just walk into the under 20 setup. The grassroots program will definitely be a platform for us to look forward to next year.
Yeah, it's definitely a great initiative to get all Zimbabweans playing rugby and also improving your net and your range. But I think it's a pity we don't have this sort of setup at the under 13, under 16, and under 18 junior Sable sides. Whether or not we need those three teams, that's a discussion for another day. But as a person who has grown up and played rugby in the Zimbabwean schoolboy system, I can really appreciate what you're doing, because as a player, sometimes, again, in those junior sides, under 13, 16, 18, when selection is done, maybe there have been a couple of times where the players' school has maybe affected the decision more than it should do. So it's honestly a great initiative that you're driving. But on the topic of selection, you know, as a coach, you're always getting messages, videos, and questions as to why so-and-so isn't playing. Looking at the under-20 side, how do you deal with backlash of when you release your team lists?
That's a tough one to deal with. Selection is always sensitive, no matter what age group you coach in. Even if you go to the school's trials this last weekend, it's been huge. There's a lot of talk going around the corridors. But as you say, the coach has to take responsibility of how he sees things, what they want to achieve. For us at the under-20 setup, it's always tough because it's life-changing to become a Sable. Some guys who've come through the age group system, through the school system, and have made it, have had the rewards from those programs. And then when they come to under-20, they've got to compete for those same positions. And then when selection comes and you select someone who hasn't played in the age group national teams over someone who's been through the pathway, becomes a sensitive issue. But ultimately, you're looking at the best player, the best performance. You wanted the best performances out of your squad. So combinations become a factor. Work ethic of the athlete become a factor. Are the players coachable for the standard that we want to go play at, the competition that we're going to? Those are all the factors that come into coaches' minds. Is the player compatible with the environment, the players around you? Are you a team player? So all those attributes, you could be the star on the field, but off the field you could be a knob. And that's something that you can't deal with, especially at international level. There's so much you look out for. We're now ambassadors of brands. We carry the Nedbank flag on our chests, and we're carrying the national flag on our chests. So all those things come to play when you're selecting a national team.
And just my final question on the rugby side of things and selection. When you look at the under-18 side, it's not, I'm not going to say an easy choice, but it definitely is easier. It's just schoolboy rugby, who's ever playing in the schools. But once you get to under-20, it's a little bit different. Some players play overseas, some are coming back from overseas, some are international, some are under-20 league. How do you balance, those choices between my national players and international players? Do I wait for so-and-so to come back, or do I just go on ahead and not exclude them from the list? How do you balance that?
It's a tough one because we have to manage what the foreign players are doing. There's also this factor that the level that they're playing at. Some are playing in the United States D1 league. Some are playing in the French league. Some are playing at university, varsity cup. You've got to try and assess their capabilities, their strengths and weaknesses per position, and what your expectations are for that player within the squad that you're looking at. And then you're assessing that against the local players who are playing in the local Paramount League. Those are in the high performance setup. So it's a huge task, but you've got to then make a decision and do what's best for the nation.
Yeah, well, that's Shaun on his selection. He has a very hard job because even I wasn't chosen for the under-20 junior Sables. No, I'm just playing. But you're not actually all rugby, Shaun. Apparently, there is a team you support in the PSL. Who is it?
Not this one. I think with the way the football has gone, back in the days we supported the Green Machine. We were Caps United because we were older Arians and we had a relationship going between the two clubs. Of late, I sort of went loyal to a friend who became a coach, and he was coaching a team that wore blue, not the one behind us, but and then he's moved on to another team that's wearing blue, and that's the team I'm supporting, Scottland FC.
Well, those of you who are watching, let us know in the comments whether or not Shaun is a Scotland supporter, or whether or not you think. Drop your team. We all want to know who supports who here. So over the weekend, there was also schoolboy football being played. It was the Ham and Tongues Invitational Tournament hosted at St. George's. And in a thrilling final, it was Prince Edward who edged St. John's 1-0. Kutama College came third, and then Falcon in fourth. Shaun, I know you're very pleased with the result.
No, definitely. It's good to see Prince Edward back at the Ham and Tongues tournament.
Yeah, well, I know that you said that they weren't invited last year, and so to come back invited and win is definitely a win in your books.
No, definitely excited for the youngsters coming through.
But yeah, that is beyond the pitch. Let us go to the favorite segment of this show, which is Rumours and Rubbish.
So rumours and rubbish, one much talked about incident, something very unusual on Saturday in the Scotland Moors game. Referee Tabani Rosario was stretchered off with a suspected ankle fracture midway through the second half. Lloyd Mapanji, the fourth official, had to take over as the centre referee. There was a lengthy stoppage of 10 minutes or so. So simple. Some fans are saying that was a deliberate time-wasting tactic. Others are saying we need a fifth official in case this happens in future because it became very difficult.
Yes, indeed, and I think it was rubbish, and seeing people saying that probably it was deliberate for Taban Rosario to come off that match injured, but indeed he was injured, and he had to be stretchered off as a precautionary measure because they didn't want him to aggravate that injury. So the medics told him, no, you can't come off the match walking, off the field walking. You have to be stretchered off and then have a scan first. And he has been told by the medical authorities that he has to be out for 3 weeks, and he's not supposed to be running or do anything else. So it was really a bad injury for him. And also, I like to say that, I was impressed with the officiating that he did before he was injured 23 minutes before the end of the game. And Lloyd Mapanji, who also replaced him, did well in the last 23 minutes. But it was something that you saw Lloyd Mapanji doing a double job before he got in for Taban Rosario. He had to make sure that he also did the substitutions and lifting that board to say number 9 is going come on and the number so, and after that he went in. And then when he wanted to give a signal to the first assistant to say how many minutes are left, and it was supposed to be somebody now to give to lift the board to say we are left with 3 minutes or we are going to add 5 minutes. And it also poses a question, should we have another official, the fifth one? Should we have such a scenario?
Because so do we need one? Because it hardly ever happens.
It hardly ever happens, but I saw it again last year at Rufaro Stadium. It involved some of the female referees, Miss Mayimbo, Grace Jimo, and one of them got injured and the other one had to step in again. So there was now a vacant post for the fourth match official.
So rumours there of foul play, but from what we saw, I don't think so.
And then also in the Dynamos Highlanders game, as I had stated earlier, it is the biggest derby and rivalry in Zimbabwean football. However, the crowd attendance was not as we had expected. Simba, what do you think about the crowd attendance? Was it yet another flop, or was it still all right for a crowd attendance?
For me, I was disappointed because for me, what I want in a match is the atmosphere, particularly on the stands. It wasn't there. It was like you're just seeing Ereno Movers playing against ZPC Kariba. You see, you need that, vibe within the stadium, on the stands. The, tense atmosphere, wasn't there. So for me, it was a disappointment. Of course, the numbers started filling up as the game progressed, but it is the build-up that I like.
And Shaun, looking at you, I've got a rumour that I've been hearing that possibly the Sables will not be winning the Africa Cup and be progressing to Sydney next year. What do you have to say about the people and the pundits who think that way?
Like you said, Sips, it's a rumour. I rubbish that. I think we have a plan. The Sables have a group of numbers coming into camp, and I think we'll be definitely ready to compete for the Africa Cup and for the World Cup qualifying spot.
Well, that brings us to the end of Fanzone. It has been a great time in the studio. Steve, I've thoroughly been enjoyed with you. And thank you, Simba and Shaun, for sitting in the Fanzone with us. Follow us on social media. We're on X, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We have a good time there. Also, head on over to fanzone.co.zw. Immerse yourself in the daily sports articles. But that is us from the Fanzone studio, and we will see you guys next week.